We need to remember that we are followers of Jesus Christ, and his life, humanly speaking, ended in failure, the failure of the cross.
Pope Francis is someone who stands out, not just for being the head of the Catholic Church, but for the way he leads with humility and kindness. Ever since he became Pope, he's been shaking things up in the best way possible, focusing on issues that really matter to everyday people, but it hasn't been all smooth sailing. Some of the things Pope Francis has done and said have stirred up controversy, especially among more traditional members of the Church.
Ma Dio è Dio per tutti.
But God is God for all.
Ma il mio Dio è più importante del tuo.
But my God is more important than your God.
Now here's where things get even more interesting. Recently, Pope Francis shared some eye-opening insights about Jesus' early life, and it's got people talking. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this because what he revealed will leave you thinking. So what has he revealed about Jesus? And what does this mean for the Church? Join us as we discuss this and more. Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Before diving into Pope Francis's surprising revelations about Jesus, it's important to understand who he is and where he comes from. His story begins long before he became one of the most influential religious figures in the world, starting with his early life in Argentina. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, came into the world on December 17, 1936, in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He was the first of 5 children in a tight-knit family. His father, Mario José Bergoglio, had left Italy to build a new life in Argentina, and like many immigrants, he worked hard to support his family. Mario found work as a railway worker, a job that wasn't glamorous but allowed him to provide for his family. Jorge's mother, Regina Maria Sivori, focused on raising the children and creating a loving home where faith and family were at the heart of everyday life. Even though the Bergoglio family didn't have much in terms of wealth, they were rich in love and values. The family's strong Catholic faith was central to their way of life, and it's something that deeply influenced young Jorge from a very early age. A childhood in Buenos Aires. Jorge grew up in a humble neighborhood in Buenos Aires where the streets were alive with people from all walks of life. His neighborhood was filled with families who had come from different parts of the world, each bringing their own culture and traditions. But life wasn't all serious for young Jorge. Like most Argentine kids, he had a passion for soccer. He would often spend his free time playing in the streets with his friends, showing that while he was deeply spiritual, he was also just like any other kid, full of energy and love for the game. So, how did his faith journey begin? Jorge's faith journey began early. His family was devoutly Catholic, and this strong religious influence was always present in his life. His spiritual formation truly took root when he attended a local Catholic school run by the Salesians of Don Bosco, a religious order well known for their work with young people. The priests and nuns there noticed something special about young Jorge. They encouraged his deep curiosity about theology, faith, and the world around him. It was in this school that Jorge's love for reading blossomed, especially in subjects like theology, philosophy, and history. He wasn't just a good student, he was someone with a genuine thirst for knowledge, constantly asking questions and seeking answers. But he wasn't all books. His friends remember him as approachable and kind-hearted, always ready to help someone in need or share a word of encouragement, forming the future Pope. While faith played a big part in Jorge's life, he never lost his connection to the everyday world. He wasn't the kind of kid who would be off in a corner by himself. Instead, he was part of the community, whether that meant playing soccer, chatting with neighbors, or helping his family in any way he could. The balance of his spiritual growth and his everyday experiences gave him a grounded outlook on life, something that would later define his approach as Pope. As Jorge grew older, his desire to explore his faith more seriously deepened. While many expected him to take a different path, his calling to the priesthood became clear. He was drawn not only to the rituals and traditions of the Catholic Church, but also to the potential for serving others. This sense of service would define his entire career. Jorge Mario Bergoglio eventually became Pope Francis, known for his humility and down-to-earth approach. But those early years in Buenos Aires, shaped by his family and his community, would remain at the core of who he was. Now, fast forward to his time as Pope. Pope Francis, known for his progressive views, has never been afraid to challenge traditional beliefs. His recent revelations about Jesus have surprised many, but they are in line with the man who grew up in the diverse streets of Buenos Aires, always questioning, always learning, and always seeking to understand others. In many ways, these revelations are a reflection of the same qualities that were nurtured in him as a young boy: his openness to new ideas, his deep compassion, and his unwavering faith. A life-changing health challenge. Despite his mostly typical upbringing, Jorge Mario Bergoglio faced a challenge that would change the course of his life forever. At the age of 21, he was struck with a severe case of pneumonia, a lung infection that can become life-threatening if not treated properly. What made Jorge's situation even more serious was that his illness was so severe that doctors had to surgically remove part of one of his lungs. It was a tough and painful recovery, one that left him bedridden for an extended period. This health scare turned out to be one of the most defining moments in Jorge's life. While he was recovering, he had a lot of time to think deeply about his life, his purpose, and where he wanted to go from there. Jorge would later speak about this illness as a key turning point in his spiritual journey. Being so vulnerable made him feel a deeper connection to his faith and brought him closer to God. It solidified something he had been thinking about for a while: the desire to dedicate his life to serving others, especially through the church. After recovering from pneumonia, Jorge returned to his studies, but his thoughts kept drifting toward a higher calling. Becoming a priest wasn't an entirely new idea for him. It had been growing in his heart for several years. The sense of purpose that emerged from his illness only deepened this desire. Once he completed his secondary education, Jorge made the life-changing decision to join the seminary and study for the priesthood. It wasn't a decision he took lightly, and although his parents were supportive, it was an emotional moment for his mother. She had always hoped Jorge would start a family of his own, but she ultimately respected his choice to serve the church. Jorge's path toward the priesthood took a pivotal turn one day during an otherwise ordinary moment. It all began with a simple visit to a church. Jorge had been heading out to celebrate Spring Day, a time for fun and festivity with friends, when he decided to stop by a church to go to confession. What started as a routine religious act turned into a life-changing experience. In the confessional, Jorge encountered a priest whose wisdom and kindness moved him deeply. Seminary life and joining the Jesuits. Once Jorge decided to become a priest, he began his formal religious education at the Archdiocesan Seminary in Buenos Aires, known as the Immaculada Concepcion Seminary, located in Villa Devoto. His studies there were intense and focused on theology, philosophy, and pastoral care. Jorge's time at the seminary was about much more than learning doctrine. It was a period of personal transformation. He immersed himself not only in academic work, but also in deep spiritual reflection, preparing for a life of service. However, after 3 years of study, Jorge felt drawn towards something more. His journey took a significant new direction when he decided to join the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits. The Jesuits are known for their focus on education, intellectual depth, and their commitment to social justice. Joining the Jesuits wasn't just another step in Jorge's education. It was a decision that would shape his views on many important issues, especially his focus on helping the poor and marginalized. This decision also likely influenced his modern and inclusive approach to the church, which has made him such a unique and sometimes controversial figure. Pope Francis, as we now know him, has often been open to discussions that challenge long-held traditions in the Catholic Church, including his recent revelation about Jesus that left many people stunned. A life of service as a Jesuit priest. So how did he decide to join this society? Becoming a Jesuit wasn't just a decision Jorge Mario Bergoglio made overnight. It involved a lot of training, self-reflection, and dedication. The Jesuits are known for their deep spiritual commitment, and joining them meant Jorge had to go through something called the novitiate. This is like an intense period of preparation where he learned all about Jesuit spirituality and made some pretty serious promises. He took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, which meant giving up worldly things, staying celibate, and always following the guidance of his religious superiors. But it wasn't just about studying and praying. Jorge also got involved in practical work, like serving the community and really living out the values he was learning about. After he finished his novitiate, Jorge was ordained as a priest, officially beginning his lifelong mission of service. Being a Jesuit priest wasn't just about leading prayers or performing religious duties. He spent years teaching at a Jesuit high school in Buenos Aires, where he didn't just focus on academics. Instead, he pushed his students to think critically and act with integrity. He wanted them to not only understand the world around them, but also to make it a better place. Beyond the classroom, Jorge was deeply involved in pastoral work. This means he spent a lot of time with the local community, providing spiritual guidance and counseling. People came to him not just for religious advice, but also to talk about their personal challenges, and Jorge was always there to listen and help. Navigating the storm Argentina's political chaos. Jorge's time as a priest coincided with one of the most challenging periods in Argentina's history. The country was going through political and social chaos, especially during the years of military dictatorship. This was a dangerous time when speaking out against the government could cost you your life. But Jorge stayed committed to his faith and his community. He didn't shy away from standing up for the oppressed or marginalized. The political unrest also played a huge role in shaping his views on social justice. Seeing the struggles of ordinary Argentinians, Jorge became even more convinced that the Church had a responsibility to fight for fairness and equality. Fast forward to today, and it's clear that Pope Francis's early life, especially his family values, his strong faith, and his time with the Jesuits, has influenced the way he leads the Catholic Church. The Pope recently made waves with an unexpected revelation about Jesus' early life that left many Catholics stunned and searching for answers. So what exactly did he say? We will reveal that soon, so stay tuned. Throughout his journey, Jorge's actions spoke louder than words. During the turbulent times in Argentina, he didn't just sit back and watch. He actively worked to protect and uplift those who were most vulnerable. People knew him as someone who wasn't afraid to stand up for what was right, even when it was risky. As he continued serving as a Jesuit priest, Jorge's leadership qualities became more evident. He eventually became the provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina, a significant position where he was responsible for overseeing all the Jesuit activities in the country. Even before he became Pope, Jorge had already made a huge difference through his work. His humility and deep compassion for others earned him immense respect. He wasn't someone who sought the spotlight, but the impact he had on those around him was undeniable. Becoming a bishop and archbishop. In 1992, Jorge Mario Bergoglio took a significant step in his journey when he was appointed Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires. This role placed him in a position of responsibility, assisting the Archbishop and working closely with local communities. It was here that Jorge's ability to connect with people from all walks of life became even more apparent. His leadership and connection with the people didn't go unnoticed. By 1998, Jorge was named the Archbishop of Buenos Aires, a position that allowed him to have a much larger influence on the Catholic Church in Argentina. Then, in 2001, Jorge experienced his first major rise within the Church when Pope John Paul II elevated him to the rank of cardinal. His role expanded, and he became known worldwide as a leader who genuinely cared about the well-being of others. Even after becoming a cardinal, Jorge never lost sight of what mattered most to him: helping those in need and advocating for the poor. His focus on social justice became one of the hallmarks of his time as a cardinal, earning him the respect and admiration of people both inside and outside the Church. He wasn't afraid to speak out on issues like poverty, inequality, and the struggles faced by those living on the fringes of society. Jorge's dedication wasn't just about charity, it was about advocating for systemic change. He believed in creating a society where everyone had a fair shot, where the most disadvantaged weren't forgotten. His approach to leadership was grounded in a deep sense of justice and mercy, which would later define his papacy. During this time, he worked tirelessly to bridge gaps, reach out to communities in need, and make sure the Church was a voice for the voiceless, a historic election becoming Pope Francis. Then came the turning point in 2013, a moment that would change Jorge's life forever and have a lasting impact on the Catholic Church. In a historic election, Jorge was chosen as the 266th Pope of the Catholic Church. Taking on the name Pope Francis, he made history as the first ever Jesuit Pope. This was a monumental shift, as previous popes had typically come from other backgrounds. His election was a surprise to many, but for those who had followed his journey, it made perfect sense. Pope Francis was someone who had spent his entire life helping people, standing up for the poor and fighting for fairness and equality. Now, he was given a global platform to continue that work on an even larger scale. One of the most remarkable aspects of Pope Francis's approach as Pope has been his willingness to tackle difficult topics. While previous popes may have shied away from controversial subjects, Francis has always been open and honest about his beliefs, no matter how uncomfortable they might be for some. In fact, Pope Francis recently revealed some surprising insights about Jesus' early life, shocking many Catholics. But before we get into that, it's important to understand how his Jesuit training and experiences led him to make such bold statements. The Jesuit influence, a pope with a unique perspective. The fact that Pope Francis is a Jesuit can't be understated. The Jesuits are a unique order within the Catholic Church, known for their dedication to intellectual rigor, social justice, and service to others. This background is key to understanding how Pope Francis approaches his role as leader of the Church. The Jesuits place a huge emphasis on education, and this has shaped the way Francis leads. He believes in the power of knowledge and understanding, not just within the Church, but for society as a whole. Pope Francis often speaks about the need to help the poor, address climate change, and create a more just and compassionate world. But perhaps one of the most striking things about Pope Francis is his willingness to engage with topics that many leaders before him would have avoided. His Jesuit training taught him to ask questions and seek deeper truths, even when the answers might be challenging or controversial. That's why, under his leadership, the Church has started to address issues that were previously seen as taboo. Key issues and papal reforms. From the moment he became Pope, Francis has been all about addressing big issues. He's spoken out on things like inequality, the environment, and the importance of kindness and empathy. He's also made some bold moves to reform the Church itself, pushing for more openness and accountability to better meet the needs of both its members and the world. One of the standout things about Pope Francis is how he's worked to bring people of different faiths and backgrounds together, promoting peace and cooperation across the board. His leadership style is unique, marked by a willingness to listen to others and have real conversations. During his travels, he's met with people from all walks of life, hearing their concerns and sharing his message of unity and understanding. As his papacy continues, Pope Francis's influence stretches far and wide, not just within the Catholic Church, but in society as a whole. His focus on addressing social challenges, encouraging dialogue, and leading with humility has solidified his reputation as a different kind of leader. His background as a Jesuit and his early experiences before becoming Pope have shaped how he leads and serves, especially when it comes to helping those on the margins of society. What makes him even more unique is that he doesn't just preach about these values, he lives them. His personal lifestyle sets him apart from many popes before him. When Jorge Mario Bergoglio became Pope Francis in 2013, he made a symbolic yet practical choice that caught everyone's attention. Rather than move into the Grand Apostolic Palace, where popes traditionally lived, he chose to stay in a much simpler place. Choosing modesty over luxury. This decision to live modestly was a huge break from tradition. The Apostolic Palace, with its grand halls and historical significance, has been home to many popes. But Pope Francis decided to live in the Vatican guest house, known as the Domus Sancti Marthi. This building was originally meant to house visitors and clergy attending Vatican events. By staying there, Pope Francis made it clear that he values simplicity over grandeur. His suite in the guest house is modest, reflecting his desire to live more like everyday people. Compared to the lavish apostolic palace, the guest house is practical and modern, focusing more on comfort and accessibility than on history or luxury. This choice highlights Pope Francis's commitment to living humbly and staying connected to the people, showing that even as the leader of the Catholic Church, he remains grounded in his values of humility and service. Pope Francis's choice to live in the Vatican guest house, the Domus Sanctae Marthae, rather than the luxurious apostolic palace, reflects his desire for simplicity and approachability. His suite is functional and down-to-earth, meant to host visitors and hold meetings, but it lacks the grandeur that comes with the traditional papal apartments. This decision allows Pope Francis to be closer to others, fostering a more relaxed, informal atmosphere where he can engage with people directly. It fits perfectly with his leadership style, which prioritizes openness and accessibility. In so many ways, Pope Francis's lifestyle is all about simplicity. He doesn't just preach modesty, he lives it. Whether he's traveling in a simple car instead of a fancy one or opting for plain vestments instead of elaborate ones, his personal choices send a clear message. These choices are deeply influenced by his background as a Jesuit, a religious order known for its dedication to poverty and service. For Pope Francis, living humbly is a core part of who he is. Pope Francis's influence on social justice. You can see Pope Francis's commitment to social justice not only in what he says, but in how he lives. He's always speaking out about standing in solidarity with the poor and tackling social inequalities. One of the key parts of his papacy has been his unwavering dedication to the marginalized and those struggling in poverty. By living in the guest house and steering clear of luxury, he practices what he preaches, empathizing with those who face hardship and social exclusion. Throughout his time as Pope, Francis has championed causes like fighting poverty, addressing economic inequality, and supporting those in need. His lifestyle is a reflection of these values. It's one thing to talk about social justice, but it's another to embody those principles in everyday life, which Pope Francis does through his humble way of living. Pope Francis's decision to live outside the papal apartments is a big deal because it breaks away from centuries of tradition. The Apostolic Palace has long been the official residence of the Pope, rich in history and symbolism. But by choosing the simpler guest house, Pope Francis is challenging old expectations and setting a new, more down-to-earth standard for papal living. This decision is part of his broader efforts to reform the Catholic Church. He's working to make the Church more open, transparent, and focused on social justice. By living humbly, he's putting those reformist values into practice. Staying at the Domus Sanctae Marthae also means Pope Francis gets to interact more with the Vatican community. The guest house sees a lot of people coming and going, and his presence there encourages casual conversations and closer connections with others, making him even more approachable. Moreover, Pope Francis frequently uses his position to influence global discussions on social justice, emphasizing the role of the Church in mediating conflicts and fostering dialogue among diverse populations. His vocal support for refugees and his criticism of economic systems that exacerbate poverty exemplify his active engagement in worldly affairs beyond the ecclesiastical domain. These actions, combined with his personal choices, not only reinforce his commitment to living out the Church's social teachings, but also inspire a larger movement towards greater accountability and compassion in global leadership. Progressive views and controversial teachings. Pope Francis is widely recognized for his progressive views and his readiness to tackle controversial topics within the Catholic Church. His papacy has brought fresh perspectives to several issues, creating headlines and sparking lively debates among Catholics and beyond. One of the most talked about aspects of his leadership is how he approaches LGBTQ+ Catholics and same-sex couples. Traditionally, the Catholic Church has upheld strict teachings on marriage and sexuality, often adopting a conservative viewpoint. However, Pope Francis has taken significant steps to foster a more open and inclusive environment. For the first time in the Church's history, he openly discussed the possibility of blessing same-sex couples. While the official teaching on marriage remains unchanged, his statements indicate a shift towards a more compassionate approach for these couples. Another hot-button issue where Pope Francis has sparked debate is his perspective on hell. The traditional teaching of the Catholic Church views hell as a place of eternal punishment for those who are damned. In contrast, Pope Francis has proposed that hell may not be a literal place. Instead, he has suggested that the souls of the damned might simply cease to exist after committing grave sins. This viewpoint marks a significant shift from conventional Catholic doctrine. Pope Francis believes that instilling fear of hell isn't the best way to encourage moral behavior or deepen one's faith. Instead, he emphasizes the importance of compassion and understanding, focusing on God's love and mercy as central themes of faith. Advocating for social justice and contemporary issues, Pope Francis has also taken a strong stance on pressing social issues, a departure from what many might expect from a pope. He has highlighted two urgent problems facing the world today: youth unemployment and the isolation of the elderly. These concerns showcase his commitment to social justice and the well-being of vulnerable populations. By drawing attention to these issues, he aims to inspire action and promote a more inclusive society. His views on abortion reflect a similarly nuanced approach. While he continues to believe that abortion is a sin, he emphasizes the importance of forgiveness. In 2016, he made headlines by allowing priests to forgive women who have had abortions, a move seen as one that fosters greater compassion and understanding. Furthermore, in 2018, Pope Francis took a firm stand against the death penalty, declaring it wrong under any circumstances. This position aligns with his broader commitment to human dignity and the sanctity of life. Now, what is this revelation about Jesus that we've been talking about since the start of the video? The unbelievable revelation about Jesus. When it comes to the teachings of Jesus, few things can stir up as much discussion as what Pope Francis recently revealed about him. This news might just take you by surprise, so let's dive in and explore what it all means. Pope Francis is focusing on a deeper understanding of Jesus' life and actions. He wants us to see Jesus not just as a figure from the past, but as someone who actively engaged with people. The Pope points out that Jesus was never a distant or abstract character. Instead, he was someone who was right there in the midst of the daily struggles faced by ordinary folks. Jesus truly cared about the lives of the poor and marginalized and took action to help them. Think about it. Jesus is well known for his compassion toward those who were suffering or cast aside by society. He didn't just sit back and watch. He healed the sick, comforted those who were grieving, and stood up against injustice. Pope Francis emphasizes that Jesus acted out of a genuine concern for people's well-being. He didn't just look from afar, he was actively involved in the challenges that people faced every day. In today's world, Pope Francis wants Christians to follow this example. For him, being a follower of Jesus goes beyond just going to church or participating in religious rituals. It's about truly embodying the values that Jesus lived out in his own life. According to the Pope, Christians are called to take an active role in caring for those who are less fortunate, a revolutionary understanding. Now, let's think back to when Jesus lived under Roman rule. That was a time filled with oppression and injustice. In such a harsh environment, Jesus' teachings and actions were nothing short of revolutionary. They challenged the norms of society and advocated for a more inclusive and caring world. A crucial part of Pope Francis's revelation is the idea that Jesus saw people as whole beings. He didn't judge them based on their actions or social status. Rather, he embraced them entirely, recognizing their struggles and offering help without any form of condemnation. Pope Francis believes that this understanding is essential for Christians today. By seeing and supporting others in their full humanity, Christians can live out the example set by Jesus. His mission was not solely about addressing immediate needs, but also about providing spiritual redemption and guidance. This viewpoint really ramps up the kind of empathy we're talking about. It's not just about feeling bad for someone. It's about getting in there and helping, while also boosting their spirit and emotional well-being. Pope Francis is all about pushing the Church to break out of its usual boundaries and really get involved with what's happening in the real world. He's pushing for a faith that doesn't just talk the talk, but walks the walk, showing what Jesus' teachings are all about through action. This isn't just about tweaking things here and there. It's about shaking up society's big structures to make things fairer and more peaceful. The Pope is super proactive on social issues, and he's making it clear that real faith means stepping up boldly, loving deeply, and standing with those who are pushed aside. So what do you think? Is Pope Francis onto something here? Share your thoughts in the comments. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest videos. While you're still here, click the video on your screen to see more interesting content like this one.